Let's play around with the timings here. So here we have a delay where we can delay this fetch Pokemon for a certain amount of time. And if I set that delay to 450 milliseconds, then I go Pikachu, we're going to see that there. Then we'll go Charizard and then Mew, and things are looking pretty good there. It's loading pretty fast. We're seeing a little loading indicator. It is kind of flashing a little bit. If we take this down to maybe 300 milliseconds, then we'll see a bit of a flash even more. And then ultimately, if we take this down to something like 200 milliseconds, then yeah, that's not super. I'm not super thrilled about that. I would much rather see nothing at all and have it be just slightly delayed than see that flash of loading state there. So let's go ahead and we can improve this a fair amount. In fact, I'm actually going to just leave that right there. And I'm going to say, why don't we add a class that has a transition delay so that it doesn't actually apply the transition until a little bit later, maybe after 400 milliseconds or something like that. So let's come down here, and on our class name that we have for our Pokemon info, rather than applying this style, we'll apply that class name. So we'll say Pokemon info, and then we'll add in, if we're pending, Pokemon loading class. Otherwise, just an empty string there will do fine. Okay, great. And as it happens, somebody already made this Pokemon loading class. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that's doing. So here we have our Pokemon info, and when it's loading, then we'll set the opacity to 6. We'll transition the opacity just instantly. We're not going to do any sort of easing or anything, but we're going to add this transition delay of 400 milliseconds so that it doesn't show up immediately. So with that, let's go ahead and save here. We'll go to Pikachu and Charizard and Mew. And you know, it is exactly the same amount of time, but it feels a lot faster. So I'm much happier with that because we're not showing this flash of loading state. So in review, all that we really changed here was instead of adding an inline style, we added a class that had a transition delay so that we don't show that loading state immediately, but we actually wait a little bit before we show that loading state so we can avoid a flash of loading state. This is actually something that I did in a work project years ago when I was working with AngularJS. I saw that flash of loading state on fast network connections, and it just made things look really not great. And so I actually slowed down every single network request so that it took at least like 200 milliseconds or 250 milliseconds so that I could always show a spinner for more than just a flash of time, but it would actually show that spinner for a little bit. So I degraded the experience for everybody just so that the actual experience for users with fast connections didn't see a flash of loading state. Not super great, but it did end up improving the user experience a little bit, and so I was okay with it at the time. I'm really glad that the React team has actually built this behavior in, and it's even better than what I had before because if the request is fast, then we don't show any loading state at all.